how's it going, everybody? Welcome to FoundFlix. On today's Ending Explained, we're looking at Relic, following 3 generations of women in a family. And the daughter begins to link her mother's increasingly volatile behavior to an evil presence at their family's decaying home. This is one that I was excited to hit streaming when reviews started calling it the scariest movie since whatever. So that is always a bit hard to live up to, but this does offer a quite intriguing and unique take on a horror family drama. Because at its core, the real story is of the family coming to terms with the fact that Grandma Edna is succumbing to dementia, and the implications of this and what it means to the others in her life. And it is from this that the horror is born in a more naturalistic way, always acting as a kind of specific metaphor to that surface story, which is good for a guy like me because that means there's lots of stuff to look at and everything always means 2 things. But seriously, I did enjoy this one for the atmosphere alone, and it maintains a consistently overall creepy vibe, dealing with the familial relationships, but also with dashes of horror lingering underneath. Also, the main trio of ladies do an excellent job across the board and help to carry along a few slower moments and story beats. And the soundtrack on this really added a lot to that sense of dread as well. Not really a soundtrack per se, but kind of sonic soundscapes. And something about the score really added a lot to everything as well. So let's pay a visit to Grandma with Relic, breaking down the story and its deeper metaphorical elements at play, as well as explaining the ending. Seeing blurry lights, they come into focus on Christmas decor set up on the mantle, then honing in on a stained glass window of a forest scene and rolling hills. Someone is seen running a bath as it starts to overflow out of the tub and down the stairs, trickling past the feet of an elderly woman standing there naked. She starts to rapidly breathe as someone else in the room starts to get to their feet in front of her. This is our first glimpse into the mental state of Edna, this incident occurring the prior Christmas to the present, as we come to learn later. And already from here, it appears that there is at least some cognitive decline at play. We then jump forward a year from this to Edna's daughter Kay and her daughter Sam on their way to Edna's house, overhearing a concerning voicemail from a neighbor that she's recently gone missing. So they investigate for themselves, finding the house empty, yet cluttered with belongings, in particular her candle making station, which it looks like she's been quite preoccupied with. The idea of crafting these ornate designs out of a simple candle, essentially changing its form into something else, is an important thing to notice. There's more evidence of potential dementia around the house, like notes scattered everywhere to remind Edna to take her pills and the like, yet Kay seems more disturbed by her armchair facing the window, out of its assumedly usual position towards the TV. It's also important to establish the concept of the house here. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but it's true. But a family's home has obvious important meaning and is tied with countless memories over the years, something we might look back on fondly. And these memories are characterized by the piles of mementos and stuff crammed into the house. For Edna, all she has left is her memories, especially since her husband died, and this seems to have possibly been the catalyst that set off her quick mental decline. Now the house is not a fond place, but actually an anchor holding her back to the past. With no sign of her mother, Kay enlists the police's help, telling the officer that she has no mental problems, but is in her 80s and tends to forget things. She says, mentioning the Christmas flooding, kind of writing it off as no big deal. This is actually a big thing too. For Kay, at this point, she genuinely doesn't think or possibly can't accept that anything is wrong with her mother, and that's her whole problem that she'll have to struggle with. At least for now, to try and find her mother, the officer sets up a search party to go look in the nearby woods. Back at the house, Sam bursts into a room overloaded with belongings, her rummaging stopped by a strange scraping sound coming from a closet. She notices it oddly has an extra lock on it, and inside is also piled high with more stuff. She hears plastic crinkling and pushes the clothes away, revealing a small black rotting spot on the wall. This seems to represent through the house the deterioration of Edna's mind that has already started to seep in, but isn't quite yet at a worrisome point. But again, starting to creep in there, as we will start to see more of later. The mother and daughter set to tidying up the place, Kay noticing that she's been leaving food out for Chester, her long expired pet. Yeah, she's fine, obviously. These two seem to have drifted apart over the years, as Sam always calls her mom by her first name, learning that she quit her job at an art gallery and is back to bartending. Things getting heated when Kay asks if she's gonna do that for the rest of her life. Yeah, maybe, Sam fires back. Regardless, Kay says she's glad she's here, but admits she doesn't know what she's supposed to be doing. Sam encouraging her that she thinks she's doing it right now. Just showing support and compassion is sometimes all that's really required of us. Kind of the whole point of the whole thing here. The search party is a waste, so it's back to cleaning the house and hoping that she'll come home, moving the armchair back into its well-worn grooves in the carpet. Sam goes to smoke a joint, suddenly joined by an unexpected guest. She thinks it's her gran, but it's the neighbor's boy Jamie. Sam asks when he last saw her, but he begrudgingly says that he's not allowed over here anymore, and instead of elaborating, asks for a toke, which amuses Sam, showing a smile for the first time since being here. She invites him inside, but he declines, implying something must have happened between him and Edna, something severe enough to have his dad tell him to stay away. Sam notices another new lock on the door, and Kay divulges that she thinks Edna was scared, as she thought that someone was coming in the house, finding doors randomly open and lights left on and her armchair shifted. Sam asks if she told the police, but Kay excuses that she just forgets things. Sam annoyed, as she could have called her to come and help then, but she didn't know. All subtle hints of her beginning to lose track of what's really happening, which Kay isn't still ready to accept. In her room, Sam finds a cardigan of Edna's, smelling it longingly when putting it on, but then is alarmed finding a note in the pocket, reading "Don't follow it," followed by a loud bang on the wall coming from the living room. Perhaps there is something supernatural going on here as well. No, sorry. There's no ghost. The ghost is in your mind. Kay shifts aside an urn, most likely Edna's husband's ashes, hearing muffled shuffling on the other side of the wall. Then another loud slam when she gets closer. Sam joins her, hearing more shuffling within the walls and noticing the same black weathered pattern up the entire way to the ceiling. The darkness is, as we see, starting to spread its way further into the house. That night, Kay has a dream vision of sorts, in the forest seeing a distant figure, and comes to an old cabin adorned with the same stained glass window from their house, the door ominously opening for her. There's flashes of a dying man on the bed, the same blackness seen here covering everything, then seeing his gnarled, rotting corpse surrounded by flies. This is followed by another quick flash of him looking a bit healthier glancing out of the window, before again collapsing off the side of the bed dead. It's not until later that we learn that this was the family's great-grandfather, left to die alone in this cabin. Obviously affected by the dream, Kay hops in bed with Sam, assuring her everything is fine, and later seeing a mysterious hand reaching out to touch her head. Not that mysterious though, as we find out in the morning. Kay awakes to the tea kettle on, and just like that, her missing mother has returned out of nowhere. Kay is befuddled, asking where she's been. Edna stares off, not answering, seeing that she has no shoes on, only offering her some tea. Well, that's definitely disconcerting, but hey, at least she's back. An excited Sam running down to give her a big old hug, just happy that her gran is safe. A doctor comes to check her out, and she seems fine physically, walking with no issue, and is able to rattle off several birthdays without hesitation, seemingly still pretty sharp mentally as well. But Kay notices a bruise on her chest, Edna brushing it off as just her being clumsy, but she insists that she shouldn't be alone for the next few days, to her mom's annoyance. But Kay becomes increasingly convinced that her mom needs help, finding blood on her nightgown when doing laundry. She confronts her again about where she was, Edna casually snapping, "I went out, I suppose." She asks about the blood and if she needs help, Edna seething back, "With what?" Kay brings up the notes everywhere, and Sam steps in to defuse the situation, asking her mom to ease off as she must be exhausted. She checks in on her later, Edna staring into the mirror and her chest bruise, which looks just like the black stuff in the cabin and walls here, and appears that her bruise is getting bigger as well. Sam comes in with tea, apologizing for her mom, saying that she's just worried about her, and Edna kindly gives her a no doubt important wedding ring of hers. Sam is taken aback, but she insists she might need it one day. Well, that's sweet. Elsewhere, mom is hard at work, having to juggle her career on top of everything else, and has organized at least this one pile of junk. Amongst it, Sam finds an old sketchbook of her grandfather's, including a drawing of the cabin from Kay's dreams. She explains it was on the property when their grandparents inherited it, and Kay's great-grandfather lived there by himself. She remembers stories about how his mind wasn't there in the end, and no one knew how bad it was, and he wasn't cared for like he should have been. An obvious parallel to the current situation with Edna. For Kay, the best measure means putting her mom in a retirement facility, although Sam thinks that she shouldn't. But Kay knows that she can't be on her own anymore. Why not let her stay at her house then, Sam suggests. Kay arguing that it's not about room, but needing to be washed. She turns the tables, asking isn't that the whole deal? She changes your nappies and now you change hers. But Kay is still positive that this is what's best for Gran. Well, at least she's trying to get her some help, but throwing in a retirement home is kind of attempting to forget about instead of dealing with the problem, and that ain't gonna work. Later that night, Kay can't sleep and finds Edna downstairs at the door talking to no one, whispering they're scaring her. Spotting that same dark figure from her dream and the opening scene lurking behind her, starting to make its presence further known. When Kay calls for her, she moves her hair out of her face, strangely asking if she's going to leave. Kay assures her that she's not and gets her back to bed. She asks if she's going to be alright, and Edna oddly turns away, hearing faint screeching sounds. "It's here," she mumbles, "under the bed." Kay is certain that there's nothing there, but she demands that she check. She lifts off the covers, seeing only darkness, and momentarily there looks to be something that starts to move, but Kay gets startled by a book dropping, causing her to hit her head. Kay, annoyed, thinking that her mom did that on purpose, but it's the same kind of thing as the others. Edna is also concerned about changing into something else, the thing that is lingering in the walls and under the bed, almost as though by keeping this monster of hers at bay, she can still try to keep a grip on things. Regardless, Kay ventures to the facility in Melbourne the next day, the associate listing off their many amenities and extra things installed in the room to help with their mobility. Upon seeing the building, and its much more obviously debilitated patients, even she thinks her mom isn't ready for this place. Not quite at the point of complete dependence, and returns to her car upset, obviously unsure of what to do next. Sam comes back to the house hearing some jazzy tunes playing and discovers Edna dancing joyously, calling her Jimmy accidentally, but she quickly corrects herself. "Whoop, that was sharp, still got it, Granny." Edna gives her a cha-cha lesson, both giggling and enjoying their time together. A brief reprieve of happiness, but it's quickly soured. Sam kindly offers to move out here to help with cleaning and cooking and stuff, and Edna wonders if this was her idea or her mother's. Hers, she says, but Edna's uninterested, clearly put off, feeling that she's not some kind of project. Sam brings up the fair point that it would still be better than an old folks home that her mom is looking at, right? And that's when things turn. When Edna sees the ring that she earlier gave Sam, she loses it, demanding it back and violently pulling on her finger. Sam is rightfully upset, yelling for her to take the dang ring, throwing it at her and leaving in a huff. Floating through shots of the house, this time they now start to turn off kilter, illustrating the shifting dominance in Edna's illness. A dark silhouette impatiently waiting on the other side of the door. Sam takes a bath, seeing a shadow moving under the door, assuming it's Gran, only hearing scraping sounds, and then they abruptly walk off. And now Sam too is starting to really see the signs that something is wrong here, later eyeing Edna intently while she carves up more candles. Kay is confused, seeing some of her old school report cards in the trash. Edna saying, well, she's got to make room for Sam moving in, but this also is kind of her first admitting to having to give up her memories. Kay's confused though, as she wasn't aware of their plan, saying that she's not moving in. Edna combatively asking, how was Melbourne? Showing that she doesn't have too many great options at the moment. Sam later comes across Edna, whistling at the same closet door, croaking and afraid that she doesn't like this place. Asking why she installed the lock, she thinks this is where they got in, whoever was coming into the house, and continues that ever since her husband passed, the house feels unfamiliar and somehow larger. Like I said earlier, it seems her husband was the one last thread that she had of her life in the present, and when that was gone, she was put on a slippery slope. The house is the only thing she has left, wistfully remembering all of the memories, and changes her tune, suddenly warmly telling Sammy that she's glad she's moving in. Sam is kept awake by more rhythmic banging, but it's just the dryer, nothing sinister, her shutting it off and yelling for Gran. Yet strangely, the washing machine lid closes by itself when she turns, again hinting at something supernatural tied to the house and Edna's illness. Kay has another dream about the creepy cabin, but now it's her mother rather than her great-grandpa in there. Her on the bed and inevitably collapsing off the side dead. And instead of a body on the floor, it's a bunch of the black stuff in a person's shape, probably tied to that shadowy figure we keep seeing, our metaphorical monster the family is battling. The darkness spreading over the stained glass of the cabin, which we know was repurposed at the house, seeing how things are kind of repeating in a sense what happened there. Again illustrating Edna's further decaying mental state, which becomes clear the next day when Sam checks in on Edna and overhears Edna talking to no one about how they aren't really Kay and Sammy but imposters, pretending to be them, hoping that she'll go to sleep and never wake up so they can dump her in the ground to rot. Sam asks who she's talking to, noticing her candle is all messed up and weird looking, in stark contrast to what she was making earlier. Noticing that she's hurt herself, Edna becomes agitated, running at her with the knife, demanding to leave her room. Yikes, turning violent and alarmingly paranoid all of a sudden, aren't we? Sam decides to investigate what happened with the neighbor neighbor kid paying his dad a visit. She learns that they were playing a game of hide and seek. It was Jamie's turn to hide, and he chose the closet with a lock on it. Edna locked him in the closet and left him in there, seemingly forgetting that they were playing, and he was trapped in the closet for hours. When he went to look for him, Edna said that she hadn't seen him, but he could clearly hear his son screaming from inside, connecting back to that person she thought was getting in through the closet, all in correlation to losing herself momentarily while playing hide and seek with Jamie, and becoming convinced henceforth that he was an evil intruder of some kind trying to break free from the closet and get her. Kay goes outside, finding her mom frantically eating old photographs, now doing literally anything she can to hold on to her memories. Kay tries to wrestle the photo book away, but she snatches it back, gravely stating, "I'm still your mother." Seeing the pictures left behind of the family and other memories are covered in the same telltale black substance. Edna digs a hole, thinking that the pictures will be safe out here, down in the ground, hoping that this will somehow preserve the memories. But when Kay asks from what, she admits that she doesn't know, and complains of hitting that window, and buries the book in the earth. She considers maybe that thing was just waiting for her, until she was weak and lonely enough, and wishes she could just turn around and go back, shaken that she's starting to lose everything, very obviously struggling with the rapidly developing loss of her mind and her past, which she has been clinging on to for so long. Kay, after everything they've been through, has a change of heart, assuring her that she's going to help, and offers for her to come home to her place in Melbourne. She apologizes for not being there more, begging to let her help, finally stepping up and showing the real support she should as a daughter to her mother. Edna nods in agreement, but starts getting upset and confused, again asking where is everyone. Kay tries to get through to her, giving her a hug and promising that she won't leave. Meanwhile, Sam is back at that infernal closet, spotting fingernail scratchings from Jamie's time there, and notices when looking past the pile of stuff, the room appears to keep going further back. She moves the boxes, and it's an entire other room back there, littered with, yep, even more stuff from Edna's past, and finds more notes like "My mother has green eyes," and "My name is Edna." Impossibly, the area keeps going to another hall and more rooms. The walls here covered in the black soot. The house with its halls and rooms to nowhere in ever-changing shape and state have now come to represent Edna's current state of mind. Everything is starting to turn into a jumbled mess of memories and confusion, losing touch with keeping track of the past, and now including even Sam, as she's trapped in this mess of her grandmother's memories. She hears more scraping and decides to nope out and retreats back. Now the closet door has been replaced by yet another hall, and when going back the other way, it's changed again to two glass pane doors, leading to a staircase to nowhere. She tries her phone, but it's not working, her resorting to banging on the walls to get her mom's attention. Kay is confused, as Sammy appears to have gone missing, but her stuff is still here. She orders her mom to eat something, her just kind of blankly staring back at her. She leaves the table without a word, and after getting a few feet, proceeds to urinate on the floor. Kay gets a bath ready for her, seeing the bruising has started to spread across her whole body. Sam is still trapped in the labyrinth behind the walls, finding more notes with decidedly rudimentary handwriting, things like "It's here" and "Where are you?" The futility of the situation causes her to cry out in anguish, sitting on the floor in momentary defeat. More loud creaking is heard as Kay knocks on the bathroom door to check on her mom. Sam enters another area with substantially lower ceilings and keeps frantically crawling forward, while Kay peeks over the bathroom door, seeing Edna scratching at herself violently. Alarmed, she starts banging at the door, seeing water start to pour out from under the crack, and Edna calmly opens the door holding a knife. Kay cries about her chest, and the overflow hits a heater, plunging the house into total darkness. She hears angry banging and glass shattering, and yells for her to stop, but she just keeps breaking shit. She then spots Edna at the end of the hall looking a bit different, causing her to gasp, and extinguishes the candle. Obviously, we see here that Edna has indeed changed into the dark and frightening figure they all feared, their actual fear related to accepting the reality of Edna losing her mind, as Sam is confronted with even lower ceilings and twists and turns, which has no way to keep going. And indeed, the walls are literally closing in on her. Seeing more of the black rot on the ceiling, she's able to kick through it to make a hole to escape to an even more claustrophobic spot, as Kay stumbles upon her mother on the ground, and her leg violently snaps out of place, her bone protruding through the skin, which she pops right back in, groaning she's not Kay, sending her fleeing in terror. Sam sees water now streaming down the walls, and finds another weak spot to break through, and see it's on the other side of the fireplace where they were hearing all the weird noises surprises initially. About to go through, she's stopped by the sound of her mom screaming, and does call her mom, showing the evolution of their relationship and growing closer together because of this. And she tracks her down, Kay warning it's not Edna anymore, hearing her let out an otherworldly groan right on cue. They set back to smashing the wall as Edna appears crawling on all fours and looking actually pretty terrifying there. Sam climbs through the wall and grabs her mom, while Edna grabs on her from the other side in a Kay tug of war. Another yank gets her loose, but Edna is right behind, climbing right on top of Kay. She pushes her off and she turns to Sam. Kay doles out a few smacks with a pipe to the head for good measure, and the two escape. But Kay is stopped by her mother wheezing out her name, along with seeing another note, "I am loved." Sam beckons her to come, waiting at the door. She pauses, seeing the darkness on the window, and considers. Sam asks what it is, and Kay speaks up that she can't leave her and slams the door closed and locks it. Sam left outside pounding in anguish, yelling it's not Gran, begging her to come back. She returns to the living room, Edna still slumped on the ground, and carefully approaches her, gingerly carrying her upstairs back to her room. She lovingly caresses her as Edna weakly wheezes. She removes her robe, seeing dark gashes all over her body, and starts to peel it off piece by piece, revealing a dark black smooth skin underneath, eventually her entire body looking like this from removing all the outer shell, and effectively showing a new layer of herself. She places a kiss on her head, and looks over, seeing Sam has returned, hesitating in the doorway. Kay lays down in bed with her, holding her hand and holding back tears. This is a quite powerful moment, symbolizing them united as a family no matter what happens. Everything horror-wise in the movie seems to come from a place of fear for all three of the women. They are scared of the inevitability of losing Edna, and scared to see her changing and succumbing to dementia. With her physical change, this sort of represents that idea. And still, regardless, Kay and Sam stay by their side, and provide the support she needs that their ill-fated grandfather missed out on. There's also the looming idea of Sam having to face the same challenges as her mother at some point, her in bed noticing a black spot starting to form on her mother's back, meaning that one day she'll have to face the same inevitable circle of life that made up our story. At least they will have each other, which is the whole point of the ending here. They're no longer consumed by fear, especially since all this is unavoidable anyway. Well, that wraps it up for this ending explained on Relic. While not as terrifying as it might have been billed, I did appreciate its naturalistic horror style that it utilized, and told a surprisingly heartfelt and emotional story that was quite effective about dealing with the inevitable. It was an impressive debut from Natalie Erica James, apparently based on an experience in her own life, and while certainly making a whole movie about dealing with this kind of stuff is probably a pretty good way to deal with it. And don't forget, before we go, you can send me requests for any movies or TV shows you'd like to see me explain by sending them my way on any of my social media accounts at FoundFlix. What did you guys think of Relic and its ending? Were there any other hidden meanings or messages that you found in the story? Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Thanks for watching FoundFlix. See you next time.